The snow fell so thick over the Brooks Range that Captain Madeline Hartley could barely see her own gloved hand in front of her face. Through the white curtain of the blizzard, she pressed her eye against the scope of a rifle that shouldn't exist, watching a target 620 meters away that she shouldn't be able to see. Her finger rested on the trigger. Light, professional, the way she'd been trained a lifetime ago. 147 before this, she whispered into the howling wind. One more won't change anything. Behind her, 8 men were dying, good men, American soldiers who'd walked into an ambush in the worst possible conditions, men who had families waiting for them, men who deserved to go home, all of them depending on a shot that was mathematically impossible. Madeline's breathing followed the old pattern without conscious thought. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts out. The rhythm of a sniper, the rhythm of death. Through the scope, she could barely make out the enemy position. A rock formation on the opposite ridge may be visible for 3 seconds at a time when the wind shifted the snow just right. Somewhere in that formation, another sniper waited. Another professional. Another ghost. The wind screamed across the mountain at 45 knots. The temperature had dropped to -20. Ice crystals formed on her eyelashes. Her fingers were going numb despite the thermal gloves. 620 meters in a blizzard. She'd made harder shots before. Longer distances, worse conditions. But that was another life. Another person. Someone who died 3 years ago in a helicopter crash that never really happened. Madeline closed her eyes for just a moment. When she opened them again, she wasn't on a frozen mountain in Alaska. She was in a desert compound in Syria 4 years earlier. The sun was setting, the temperature was perfect, the wind was calm, and through her scope she could see a man playing with his daughter in a courtyard, completely unaware that in 30 seconds he would be dead. That had been target 147. The last one. The one that broke her. A rifle shot cracked across the valley, snapping Madeline back to the present. Down below, one of her teammates screamed. The sound barely carried over the storm, but she heard it. She always heard the screams. Her radio crackled with static and panic. "We're going to die," someone shouted. Young voice. Terrified. "We're all going to die up here." Madeline's jaw tightened. Her finger took up the slack on the trigger. 3.5 pounds of pressure. That's all it would take. 3.5 pounds and one more name added to the list she carried in her head. One more face she'd see when she closed her eyes at night. But if she didn't pull that trigger, 8 American soldiers would freeze to death on this mountain. Or get cut down by the sniper who had them pinned. Either way, they'd die. And their deaths would be on her hands just as surely as if she'd pulled the trigger on them instead. Some choices aren't really choices at all. Madeline exhaled slowly, watching the vapor freeze in the air in front of her face. Through the scope, the target position became visible again for just a heartbeat. Maybe 2 seconds. Less than that, probably. It was enough. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. The report was instantly swallowed by the storm. For a moment, nothing happened. The bullet flew through 620 meters of blizzard, fighting crosswinds that tried to knock it off course, dropping according to calculations she'd made in her head without thinking about them. Then through the white chaos, she saw movement, a body falling, disappearing into the snow. "Confirmed kill," Madeline said into her radio. Her voice was flat, empty, professional. "Target down." The words felt like ashes in her mouth. 148. 52 hours earlier, the briefing room at Firebase Kodiak smelled like burnt coffee and diesel fuel. Captain Madeline Hartley stood at the back of the room, her medical pack sitting between her boots, and tried to make herself invisible. It was what she did best after all. Disappearing. At the front of the room, Colonel Nathaniel Merrick stood before a tactical display showing the jagged peaks of the Brooks Range. He was 68 years old with hair the color of steel wool and a face carved from granite by 35 years of military service. A scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, a souvenir from the Gulf War in 1991. He'd earned it the same day he'd earned his Silver Star, though he never talked about either one. "Weather window closes in 6 hours, Merrick said. His voice carried the weight of a man who'd led too many missions into bad odds and brought home too few of the men he'd started with. "Intelligence puts 3 American contractors in this valley structure." He tapped the screen with one thick finger. Red icons blinked on the map. "Problem is, we've got a blizzard moving in faster than predicted, and our targets aren't exactly in an accessible location." Around the table, 7 operators leaned forward to study the terrain. Hard men, experienced men, the kind of soldiers who'd seen combat in a dozen countries whose names most Americans couldn't pronounce. They wore their experience in scars and silence, in the way they moved, and the way they watched everything around them, with eyes that never really stopped calculating. Angles and threats. Sergeant Major Cole Brennan sat closest to the display. He was 45 with 23 years of service etched into every line of his face. 3 tours in Iraq, 4 in Afghanistan. A chest full of medals he kept in a drawer and never looked at. He'd led men through hell more times than he cared to remember, and he'd left pieces of himself in a dozen different deserts and mountains. Insertion point here. Merrick indicated a ridge 2 kilometers from the target. Fast rope descent. Move on foot. Extract the packages. RTB before the storm hits hard. And if we don't beat the storm, this from Specialist Ryan Hayes, the team's youngest operator. 23 years old and still young enough to ask questions that everyone else already knew the answer to. Merrick's silence said everything that needed saying. The door opened. Every head in the room turned. Old habits died hard. Know who's entering your space, always. Could be friendlies, could be threats. The difference was often measured in heartbeats. Madeline entered carrying her medical pack. It weighed 60 pounds, loaded with trauma supplies, medications, and equipment that could keep a man alive long enough to reach a field hospital. She was small, maybe 5'6", with blonde hair pulled back in a regulation bun and eyes the color of a winter sky. Her uniform was crisp, name tape, gleaming, boots polished. She looked exactly like what she was supposed to be, a junior medical officer. 6 weeks deployed, green as grass. Completely out of place in a room full of operators who'd been doing this since before she was born. "This is Captain Hartley," Merrick said. His voice was carefully neutral. "Field medic, she's with us." Cole Brennan's jaw tightened. He was a professional, so his voice stayed level and respectful. But the disagreement was clear in every word. "Sir, with respect, this is a direct action raid in extreme weather conditions. We need medical support." Merrick cut him off. The tone left no room for argument. "Captain Hartley has Arctic training. She goes." The room went quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when soldiers disagree with orders, but know better than to say so out loud. Ryan Hayes, sitting next to his partner, whispered just loud enough to be heard. "Bringing a medic into a blizzard is suicide. For her and for us if we have to babysit." Madeline heard it. Her expression didn't change. She simply moved to the back of the room, set down her pack with practiced precision, and stood at parade rest. Back straight, eyes forward, hands clasped behind her back. She'd learned a long time ago that the best way to hide was in plain sight. Be exactly what people expected to see. Don't draw attention. Don't give them any reason to look closer. Because if they look closer, they might start asking questions. And questions led to answers that Captain Madeline Hartley couldn't afford to give. Cole Brennan watched her anyway. Something about the way she carried herself was wrong. Not wrong exactly, just off. Too controlled for someone brand new to combat operations. Too still. Like she was conserving energy for something, like she was waiting. Combat veterans learned to recognize that particular quality of stillness. It was the way snipers waited, the way predators waited. It didn't belong on a rookie medic. "Wheels up in 30, Merrick said. "Gear check at 20. Move." The team filed out, already running through mental checklists. Weapons, ammunition, communication equipment, cold weather gear. Every operator had done this 1,000 times. It was muscle memory written in procedures and protocols learned through repetition until they became reflex. Madeline was last to leave as always. She touched nothing extra, said nothing extra. Just lifted that heavy pack like it weighed nothing at all and disappeared toward the armory. Cole caught Colonel Merrick in the hallway. They'd served together for 15 years. Long enough that Cole knew when the old man was holding something back. "Nathaniel," Cole said quietly. They were alone, so he used the first name. "I've read her file. She's been deployed exactly 6 weeks. 6. This isn't the mission to break in a rookie." Merrick's expression was unreadable. 40 years of military service had taught him how to keep secrets, and his face showed none of them. Orders came from up high, way up. She goes. "JSOC. Higher." Cole felt something cold settle in his gut. Higher than Joint Special Operations Command meant intelligence services, CIA, NSA, the kind of organizations that didn't show up on organization charts and didn't answer to normal chains of command. "What aren't you telling me?" Cole asked. Merrick met his eyes. For just a moment, something flickered there. Something that might have been regret, or maybe warning. "Keep her alive, Cole. That's all you need to know. Keep her alive and don't ask questions you don't want answered." Then he walked away, leaving Cole standing in the corridor with a bad feeling that was only going to get worse. The Black Hawk bucked through turbulent air rotors, screaming against wind that tried to knock it from the sky. Inside, the eight-man team sat in tactical silence, each man running through his own mental preparation. Some prayed, some reviewed procedures, some just sat and breathed and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. Madeline sat at the end of the troop compartment, medical pack between her knees, gloved hands resting on top. Her eyes were closed, but she wasn't sleeping. Her breathing followed that same deliberate pattern. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, in through the nose. Hold, out through the mouth. It was a technique they taught to snipers. Controlled breathing to slow the heart rate, to steady the hands, to turn the body into a stable firing platform capable of making shots that required absolute precision. It wasn't something they taught to medics. The loadmaster gave the 2-minute warning, holding up 2 gloved fingers. Cole leaned across the compartment. He had to shout to be heard over the rotor noise. "You good?" Madeline opened her eyes. They were gray, the color of winter steel. Calm. Unnaturally calm for someone about to fast rope into a combat zone in the middle of a blizzard. "Yes, Sergeant Major." "Stay close to me on the ground," Cole said. It was an order, but his voice was almost gentle. "Don't wander. Don't try to be a hero. You're here to patch holes. Nothing else. Understood?" "So, yes, Sergeant Major." "I mean it." Cole had daughters, 2 of them, both older than this woman sitting across from him. The protective instinct came automatically. "These mountains will kill you faster than any bullet if you—" "I understand, Sergeant Major." Her voice was flat, final, the tone of someone who'd said all they were going to say on the subject. The helicopter lurched. Someone cursed. The storm was getting worse. The pilots were fighting it, but nature didn't care about military schedules or tactical requirements. Nature just was, and if you weren't prepared for it, nature would kill you without hesitation or remorse. Madeline didn't blink, didn't react, just sat there with that same unnaturally calm expression, breathing in that same controlled pattern. 1-minute warning. The team stood, checked weapons, secured gear. Madeline shouldered her 60-pound pack and moved to the door. Her movements were efficient, no wasted motion, no hesitation. She'd done this before, Cole realized. Maybe not in combat, maybe just in training, but she'd done it enough times that her body knew what to do without her conscious mind having to think about it. The helicopter hovered. Snow whipped through the open door like frozen razors. Visibility was maybe 30 meters, maybe less. The pilots were flying on instruments, in hope trying to hold position over a landing zone they couldn't actually see. "Go, go, go!" They fast-roped into white chaos. Cole went first, sliding down the rope with practiced speed, hitting the snow and rolling to the side to make room for the next man. One by one, the team descended, 7 operators, each one hitting the ground and immediately forming a defensive perimeter, weapons out, scanning for threats they couldn't see through the storm. Madeline descended last. Her technique was flawless. Controlled descent, perfect speed. She landed soft in knee-deep snow, absorbed the impact, released the rope, and moved to her assigned position in the formation. By the time she touched ground, the Black Hawk was already pulling away. The sound of its rotors faded into the storm, leaving them alone on the mountain. The cold was immediate and vicious. It found every gap in their gear, every exposed inch of skin, and tried to suck the warmth from their core. The temperature was -15 and dropping. The wind made it feel like -40. In conditions like this, exposed skin could get frostbite in less than 5 minutes. A man could go hypothermic in 30. They had maybe 6 hours before the storm got bad enough to make extraction impossible. 6 hours to move 2 kilometers, find 3 hostages, and get back to a landing zone that might not even be accessible by then. The odds weren't good, but Cole had survived worse odds before. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. Places where the odds had been so bad that simple survival felt like victory. He'd do it again. Bring his team home. That's what he did. That's what he'd always done. Colonel Merrick's voice crackled over the radio. He was back at Firebase Kodiak, monitoring their progress on satellite feeds that were probably useless in this weather. "Shadow 7 comms check." "Shadow 7 read you 5 by 5, Cole responded. "Team on ground, beginning movement to objective." "Copy that. Weather deteriorating faster than forecast. Recommend you move fast." "Acknowledged." Cole checked his GPS. The device was struggling with the storm interference, but it gave him enough to confirm their position. 2 kilometers east to the target compound, through terrain that would be challenging in good weather and potentially lethal in this blizzard. "Combat intervals," he ordered. "Move quiet." They began the march. 8 shadows moving through a white world, each man separated by enough distance that a single burst of fire wouldn't take out multiple targets. Standard operating procedure in hostile territory. Lessons learned in blood over decades of asymmetric warfare. Madeline took rear guard without being asked. She moved like a shadow herself, each step placed deliberately, never breaking the rhythm of the patrol. When the team stopped to check navigation, she dropped to one knee and scanned their back trail, weapon ready. Cole noticed. Rookies didn't usually have that kind of discipline. They fidgeted. They asked questions. They made noise. This one was different. She moved like someone who'd done this before. Like someone who knew that silence and stillness were survival skills in places where enemies might be watching. After an hour, Ryan Hayes whispered over the team frequency. Movement. 11 o'clock high. Everyone froze. Weapons came up. Eyes scanned the slope above them, looking for threats through the shifting curtains of snow. Could be weather, Danny Torres said, but he didn't sound convinced. Could be. Hayes agreed. He didn't sound convinced either. Cole made the call. Tighten up. Weapons ready. If someone's out here, we find them first. They pushed forward. The wind howled through the valley like a living thing, drowning out all other sound. Individual operators became barely visible to each other, just darker shapes in the white chaos. Madeline adjusted her scarf covering her face, except for her eyes, and kept moving. She was cold. They were all cold. But the cold was just information. Just data to be processed and managed. It wasn't an emotion. It was a fact. She'd learned to separate facts from emotions a long time ago, in a different life. A life that officially ended 3 years ago in a helicopter crash that killed someone named Sarah Mitchell and gave birth to someone named Madeline Hartley. That's when she saw them. Boot prints in the snow, partially filled by the storm but still visible. Military pattern. Recent. Multiple sets moving in tactical formation. She touched Cole's shoulder, pointed. He saw them too. Raised his fist in the halt signal. The team stopped. Colonel Merrick came forward, examined the tracks. His face went hard. We've got company. Multiple hostiles. They're moving in tactical spread. How? Hayes demanded. How did they know we were coming? No one answered, but everyone thought the same thing. Leak, ambush, trap. New plan? Merrick's voice came over the radio. He'd been monitoring their helmet cameras, watching everything they saw. Combat spread. Watch high ground. Hartley, stay between Brennan and Torres. Anyone gets hit, you move fast. Yes, sir, Madeline said quietly. They advanced into the white unknown. Every step felt like it might be the last. Every shadow might hide an enemy. Every sound might be a threat or just the wind playing tricks. The valley narrowed. On both sides, steep slopes rose into the blizzard, their peaks invisible. The kind of terrain where elevation equaled advantage, where a single shooter on high ground could pin down an entire squad and pick them off one by one. Cole didn't like it, didn't like any of it. His instincts screamed ambush, but they had no choice. 3 American contractors were somewhere ahead, and the clock was ticking. Turn back now, those 3 men died. Push forward, maybe everyone died. Combat was full of impossible choices. Drones not getting signal, Owen reported. He held up a tablet showing nothing but static. Too much interference from the storm. Go manual, Cole ordered. Eyes and ears, old school. They spread out, each operator covering a sector. The wind picked up, driving snow horizontal, cutting visibility to maybe 15 meters. Maybe less. Madeline stayed in her assigned position, but her eyes kept drifting upward, tracking the ridgeline they couldn't see. Her breathing remained steady. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out. But her right hand had shifted slightly on her rifle. Ready, waiting. Then it came. Crack. A single rifle shot, distant but clear. The sound echoed off the valley walls, making it impossible to pinpoint the exact source. Could have come from anywhere. Could have been anything. But Cole knew that sound. He'd heard it too many times. That was a precision rifle. Long range. Someone up on that ridge had just taken a shot. Contact. He dropped behind a boulder. High ground, northeast quadrant. The team scattered, finding what cover the terrain offered. Madeline pressed herself against a rock, face medical pack in front of her, like a shield weapon up. Where? Merrick's voice crackled over the radio. High, Cole said. Northeast, maybe 600 meters. Another shot. This one hit closer. Snow erupted 3 feet from Ryan Hayes' position. He rolled behind the cover, breathing hard. That's not suppressing fire, Danny Torres said, his voice tight with controlled fear. That's a marksman. He's testing range. A third shot screamed past, so close that Owen swore he felt the air split. It punched through the snow exactly where his head had been 2 seconds earlier. Jesus Christ. Owen pressed himself flat against the ground. That guy can shoot through a blizzard. Cole's tactical mind raced through the variables. 600 meters in these conditions. Wind gusting at 40 knots. Snow reducing visibility to almost nothing. And the shooter had nearly scored a headshot. That wasn't luck. That was world-class skill. "We're being herded," he said into his radio. "He's pushing us into a kill zone." Merrick saw it too, watching through their helmet cameras from the safety of Firebase Kodiak. "Fall back to that rock formation 30 meters south. Move in pairs, covering fire." They began the tactical retreat. Hayes and Owen went first, sprinting through deep snow, while the others laid down, suppressing fire toward the ridgeline. No targets visible. Just shooting into white nothing, hoping to make the enemy keep his head down. Madeline moved with Cole staying low. Her medical pack somehow wasn't slowing her down. She crossed the open ground in a low crouch that kept her profile small, each step placed with precision. When they reached the rocks, she immediately took a position that gave her clear sight lines to the most likely casualty collection point. Professional positioning. The kind of placement that came from training and experience. The team consolidated behind the formation. A cluster of boulders that provided decent cover from the high ground but left them effectively pinned. They could hold this position for a while, but they couldn't advance, couldn't retreat, couldn't do anything but wait and hope the shooter made a mistake. "Options," Merrick asked over the radio. "We push through," Hayes said, "fast and hard. Don't give him time to set up shots." "We'd be moving straight through his kill," Cole countered. "He wants us to run. That's when he drops us. So we wait, storms getting worse by the minute." Another shot. This one hit the boulder above Danny's head. Rock fragments showered down. A piece caught his cheek, opening a shallow cut. Blood ran down to his jaw. Madeline was already moving. She crossed the 3 meters to Danny in a crouch, pulled him back, examined the wound with swift, efficient fingers. "Superficial," she said quietly, "but keep pressure on it." She handed him gauze and returned to her position. Total time 12 seconds. Cole watched her resettle behind cover. Her eyes went back to the ridgeline, tracking something he couldn't see, reading the wind patterns, watching how the snow moved. "What do you see?" he asked. She glanced at him, surprised that he'd asked her opinion. "Wind shifting, coming from northeast now, gusting between 35 and 45 knots. Low and Brian, if he's where I think he is, his next shot will drift left." Cole frowned. "You sure?" "No," she admitted, "but that's what the wind says." Another shot proved her right. It went wide left, missing by a full meter. The enemy shooter adjusted. The next round came closer, much closer. "He's learning the wind same as us," Madeline said. "He'll dial in soon." Merrick's voice crackled over the radio. He'd been listening to everything. "We can't sit here. We move in 3 minutes. Full sprint to that tree line 200 meters east. It'll break his line of sight." "Sir, that's open ground," Owen protested. "I know, but it's that or freeze to death, pinned behind these rocks. Get ready." They prepared for the run. Madeline cinched her pack tighter, secured loose straps, made sure nothing would bounce or snag. Her face showed no fear, no hesitation, just focus. Somewhere up on that invisible ridge, a patient shooter waited. A professional. Someone good enough to make 600-meter shots through a blizzard. Someone who'd done this before. Someone who knew all the same tricks and techniques. Someone like her. 60 seconds. Merrick counted down. The wind howled. Snow stung exposed skin. The cold was starting to win, creeping through layers of gear, finding its way to core body temperature. They couldn't stay here much longer. Had to move. Had to risk it. Madeline closed her eyes. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out. When she opened them again, she wasn't really Madeline Hartley anymore. She was someone else. Someone older. Someone harder. Someone who'd made 600-meter shots in worse conditions than this. Someone named Sarah Mitchell, also known as Phantom 7, also known as the woman with 147 confirmed kills who supposedly died 3 years ago in a helicopter crash. 15 seconds. She stood and prepared to run. They burst from cover as one sprinting through the deep snow, weapons ready, every muscle tense for the impact of a bullet that could come from anywhere. The first shot came 4 seconds in. It took Ryan Hayes in the shoulder, spinning him around like a puppet with cut strings. He went down hard, face first into the snow. Red bloomed across the white. "Man down!" Cole shouted, already changing direction. But Madeline was faster. She was already running toward Hayes, even as the second shot cracked past her head, close enough that she felt the thermal wake. The bullet missed her by inches, maybe less. She hit the snow beside Hayes and rolled him onto his back in one smooth motion. His shoulder was bleeding heavily, the round having punched clean through the meat of his deltoid. He was conscious, gasping, eyes wide with shock and pain. "I got you," she said, her voice cut through his panic like a knife through silk. "Stay down." Another shot struck 2 feet away. The enemy shooter had them zeroed. He could see them somehow through all this white chaos. Professional optics, thermal maybe, or just skill honed over decades of killing people at impossible distances. Cole and Danny laid down covering fire while Madeline worked. Her hands moved with brutal efficiency. Pressure dressing, clotting agent, bandage wrap, no wasted movement, no hesitation. This wasn't a rookie treating her first combat casualty. This was someone who'd done this too many times to count. Someone who'd learned these skills in places where hesitation meant death and mistakes couldn't be corrected. "Can you move?" she asked Hayes. He nodded through gritted teeth. "Then move." She hauled him up with surprising strength for someone her size and half-dragged, half-carried him toward the tree line. Cole provided cover, backing up step by step, firing controlled bursts into the storm. They made the trees barely. The shooting stopped. The silence that followed was worse. Merrick's voice came through their radio steady despite what he'd just watched through their helmet cameras. "Casualties." Hayes took one through the shoulder, Madeline reported. She was already pulling out a syringe, preparing to manage his pain. "Clean through and through, no arterial damage. I've stabilized him, but he needs extraction within 6 hours." "Can he fight?" Hayes answered himself, lifting his rifle with his good arm. His face was pale but determined. "I can fight." "Good," Merrick said, "because we're about to get a lot more company." He was right. Through the trees ahead movement, lots of it. The hostage rescue had been a setup from the start. The contractors weren't here. There were no hostages. Only an enemy force that knew exactly where the American team would land, exactly what route they'd take, exactly how to box them in and cut them down. "Ambush," Cole said flatly. His voice carried no surprise. He'd lived long enough to recognize when he'd been played. Gunfire erupted from 3 directions simultaneously. The enemy had spread out, encircling the tree line, using the storm as cover to get close. What was supposed to be a quick surgical extraction had become a sustained firefight in the worst possible conditions. The team returned fire, but they were outnumbered and running low on ammunition. Owen took a round to his chest plate. The ceramic stopped the bullet, but the impact knocked him flat. He rolled to cover, wheezing, ribs probably cracked. Danny's rifle jammed from ice buildup. He cleared it with numb fingers, cursing steadily in a monotone that suggested he'd been cursing for 23 years straight and saw no reason to stop now. Another bullet punched through a tree trunk 6 inches from Merrick's head would have been if he'd been standing there. But Merrick was 68 and hadn't survived this long by being slow. "We can't hold this position," Hayes shouted over the gunfire. Blood was already seeping through his bandage. "We can't retreat either," Cole returned. "They've got us boxed." A grenade detonated 20 meters out, showering them with frozen earth and wood splinters. Then another closer. "They're walking them in," Danny yelled. "Next one lands in our lap." Cole tried his radio, calling for air support for extraction for anything. Static answered. The storm had cut them off completely. They were alone on this mountain with an enemy force that had them surrounded, outgunned, and running out of time. Madeline crouched behind a fallen log, her sidearm out, firing measured shots at movement in the white. She wasn't spraying rounds like someone panicked. Each shot was placed. Deliberate. 2 targets dropped before the others learned to stay in cover. Cole noticed. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" She ejected, her magazine reloaded without looking. "Qualification course." "Qualification doesn't teach that." She didn't answer. Her attention had shifted to the high ground northeast of their position, the same direction the original sniper shots had come from. Her eyes tracked something Cole couldn't see. Reading the terrain, calculating angles. Another grenade landed 10 feet out. The explosion ripped through the air, and Owen screamed. Shrapnel had torn through his leg below the knee, blood pumped out at a terrifying rate. Madeline moved before anyone could react. She sprinted across open ground through incoming fire, grabbed Owen by his tactical vest, and dragged him back to cover. Bullets chewed up the snow where she'd been standing half a second earlier. She went to work on his leg immediately. The shrapnel had shredded his calf. Blood was pumping out with each heartbeat. Femoral artery nicked, maybe worse. "Need to clamp it," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. Her hands were steady even as bullets snapped overhead, even as another grenade detonated close enough to rain dirt on her back. She found the bleeder, clamped it, packed the wound with quick clot, and wrapped it tight. Owen's breathing steadied. Color returned to his face. "You're okay," Madeline told him. Her voice carried absolute certainty. You're okay. But they weren't okay. None of them were. Merrick's face had gone grim. They'd expended half their ammunition. Two men were wounded badly. The enemy was closing in from three sides. The storm was worsening. Extraction was impossible. The math was simple and brutal. They couldn't win. They couldn't run. They were going to die on this frozen mountain. How much longer can we hold? Hayes asked. His voice shook. He was 23 years old and facing the reality that he might not make it to 24. Cole checked his magazine. 3 rounds left. 2 more magazines after that. Maybe 20 minutes if they keep their distance. Less if they push. A burst of automatic fire stitched across their position. The enemy was getting braver, moving closer. We're running out of time, Danny said. Merrick looked around at his team. Men he'd led through a dozen missions. Men who'd trusted him to bring them home. He'd made the wrong call, trusted bad intelligence, led them into a trap. Now they were going to die, and it was his fault. Trevor Hayes' voice cracked over the radio, barely audible. We're not making it out of this, are we? The silence that followed was answer enough. Then someone screamed it, the words cutting through gunfire and wind, and the sound of grenades detonating. We're going to die. The words hung in the frozen air. Everyone felt it. The slow crush of inevitability. The cold mathematics of a losing battle. Cole reloaded his last magazine, preparing to make their final stand count for something. That's when Madeline spoke. I need access to high ground. Every head turned toward her. What? Merrick said. There's an outcropping 40 meters northwest. Elevation advantage. If I can get there, I can... You're a medic. Merrick cut her off. His voice carried the weight of command, of responsibility of a man trying to protect someone who couldn't protect themselves. Your job is to stay here and keep these men alive. Madeline met his eyes. Those gray eyes that had been carefully blank and professional for 6 weeks. Now something else showed in them. Something old and hard and absolutely certain. My job, she said quietly, is to make sure they don't need a medic in the first place. That's not happening. You'd be exposed. Alone and... A bullet took Merrick in the arm. He spun, hit the ground hard. The impact drove the breath from his lungs. Madeline was on him in seconds, examining the wound, through and through. Radius fracture, probably. She splinted his arm with practiced speed, tied it off. You're done shooting, sir, she said. Merrick grabbed her wrist with his good hand. His face was pale with shock and pain, but his eyes were fierce. Listen to me. You are not leaving this position. That's an order. She looked at him, not defiant, just knowing. Yes, sir, she said, but Cole saw it in her eyes. She'd already decided. The firefight intensified. The enemy sensed weakness and pressed their advantage. Grenades came more frequently now, each one closer than the last. The team's return fire grew sporadic as ammunition dwindled. Danny was down to his sidearm. Hayes could barely hold his rifle with his wounded shoulder. Owen couldn't walk. Merrick's shooting arm was useless. They were being systematically dismantled. Contact left, Cole shouted, dropping 2 hostiles who'd broken from cover. But for every enemy they put down, 2 more seemed to appear from the white curtain of snow. The temperature was dropping fast. Cole's fingers were going numb despite his gloves. He could see ice forming on Danny's beard, frost creeping across their weapons. The storm wasn't just cover for the enemy anymore. It was becoming a weapon itself. Ammo check, Merrick ordered through gritted teeth. His broken arm was agony, but command didn't stop just because you were wounded. The answers came back grim. 1 magazine. Half a magazine and maybe 20 loose rounds. Pistol only. Dry on rifle. They had maybe 5 minutes of fighting left in them. After that, it was hand-to-hand until they were overrun. Merrick tried the radio again, though they all knew it was useless. Any station, this is Shadow 7. We are taking heavy fire and require immediate QRF. How copy? Nothing but static answered. He tried the emergency beacon. Same result. The storm was too thick, the mountains too high, the interference too complete. They were alone. We need to move, Hayes said. Blood was running down his arm again, soaking through the fresh bandages. Find better cover. Maybe There is no better cover, Cole said flatly. We move, they run us down in the open. We're in the only defensible position for 100 meters. Then we're trapped. Yeah, we are. Another grenade so close the overpressure made their ears ring. Shrapnel whined through the air. A piece caught Danny in the side, punching through his vest, dropping him. Madeline moved to him immediately, but Danny waved her off. It's shallow. Check Owen. Owen's leg wound had started bleeding again. The first bandage was soaked through. Madeline unwrapped it, applied more clotting agent, rewrapped it tighter. You're losing too much blood, she said quietly. Even if we get out of here, you need a hospital within the hour. A lot of ifs in that sentence, Owen managed through gritted teeth. She didn't disagree. The snow was falling so heavily now that visibility had dropped to maybe 10 meters. The enemy fire slackened not because they were retreating, but because they couldn't see targets either. They were waiting, letting the storm do their work for them and letting the cold and the wounds and the hopelessness grind down the Americans until there was nothing left but corpses frozen in the snow. Merrick slumped against a tree, his face gray with shock and pain. Cole, take command. Sir, that's an order, Sergeant Major. I'm combat ineffective. It's your show now. Cole looked around at what was left of his team. 4 men seriously wounded, ammunition nearly gone, no extraction possible. Enemy forces in unknown strength surrounding them. The math was simple and brutal. They couldn't win, they couldn't run, they couldn't even surrender. The kind of people who set ambushes like this didn't take prisoners. They could only die. The thought settled over him like the snow. Cold, inevitable, suffocating. Hayes must have seen it in his face. Sarge, what do we do? Cole opened his mouth, closed it. He had no answer, no brilliant tactical solution, no miraculous escape plan, just the slow countdown to the end. We hold, he finally said. The words tasted like ash. We make them pay for every meter. We die, Danny finished for him. That's what you mean. We hold until we can't, and then we die. No one argued because there was nothing to argue about. It was just truth laid bare and cold as the mountain itself. Hayes's hands shook as he checked his pistol. 9 rounds left. I always knew it could happen, but I didn't think. None of us did, Cole said quietly. Owen started laughing. It wasn't a sane sound. The kind of laughter that comes when the mind starts to fracture under pressure. It was never meant to bear. We're going to die. We're actually going to die on this frozen piece of it. Shut up, Merrick ordered. But there was no force behind it. He was in too much pain, too deep in shock to put command voice into the words. The enemy fire picked up again. They'd found their range despite the storm. Rounds started impacting closer, more accurate. Someone out there could still see well enough to shoot. That sniper on the high ground. Still out there. Still hunting. A bullet cracked past Cole's head close enough that he felt the thermal wake. The heat of friction against air turned into a near miss measured in millimeters. They're tightening the noose, Danny said. 5 minutes, maybe less. Madeline had been silent throughout the exchange, working methodically to retreat wounds, redistribute ammunition, prepare for what came next. Now she stopped. Her hands rested on her medical pack. The pack that weighed 60 pounds. The pack that she'd carried without complaint or visible effort for 6 weeks. The pack that everyone assumed was full of medical supplies and trauma equipment. I can end this, she said softly. Cole didn't think he'd heard her right over the wind. What? I can end this, the sniper, the ambush, all of it. Cross, you're in shock. Just stay. I'm not in shock. She looked up at him with those gray eyes, and for the first time Cole saw something behind them. Something old and hard and absolutely certain. I'm the only one here who isn't. Before anyone could stop her, she unzipped her medical pack. Not the top section where the bandages and morphine were kept. The bottom section, the one she'd kept sealed since they'd left base. Her hands moved with practiced precision, pulling out what looked like innocent medical supplies. Rolled foam padding, cylindrical storage tubes, sealed pouches. Then she started assembling them. The foam padding unrolled to reveal a rifle stock, custom-made, precision machined. The storage tubes contained a barrel action and scope, each piece fitting together with the precision of components designed to work as a single unit. The pouches held specialized ammunition, match-grade rounds designed for extreme accuracy at extreme distances. In 30 seconds, she'd assembled a complete sniper rifle. Not military issue, something else. Custom-built with modifications Cole had never seen on any weapon system. The team stared in stunned silence. Merrick found his voice first. What the hell is that? Madeline's hands moved across the rifle with the intimacy of long familiarity, checking the action, the scope, the trigger pull. Every movement was muscle memory, reflex learned through thousands of hours of practice. M2010 enhanced sniper rifle, custom barrel and trigger group, Leupold Mark V, scope with integrated ballistic computer, effective range 1,600 meters in ideal conditions. Where did you get that? Merrick demanded. Pain and shock made his voice sharp. That weapon isn't in your equipment roster. It's not even standard issue. No, Madeline agreed quietly. It's not. She pulled the bolt chambered around. The smooth metallic click somehow carried over the storm. The sound seemed to freeze everyone in place. Cole's mind raced. The way she'd moved through the firefight, the professional calm under fire, the shooting skills that exceeded any qualification course, the way she'd read the wind and terrain like someone who'd done it 1,000 times. And now this rifle, hidden in plain sight, assembled like she could do it in her sleep. "Who are you?" he asked. Madeline stood slinging the rifle across her back. For just a moment, the careful mask she'd worn for 6 weeks slipped. What showed underneath was someone else entirely. Someone who'd fought in wars the rest of them would never know about. Someone who'd made shots they couldn't imagine. Someone who'd walked away from something she'd been very, very good at. Someone who retired, she said. Someone who walked away. Someone who thought she'd never have to do this again. Do what? She looked at him, and in that moment Cole saw the truth. This wasn't a rookie medic. This was someone who'd operated at levels he could only guess at. Someone who'd killed in ways that required absolute precision and absolute certainty. Someone who'd been good enough at it that they'd let her disappear when she'd wanted out. "My job," Madeline said simply. "What I was trained to do, what I've always been good at." "And what job was that?" Merrick asked, though his voice suggested he was starting to understand. Madeline checked her rifle one final time. Then she looked up at the ridgeline. Somewhere out there in the storm, an enemy sniper waited. A professional, someone good enough to make 600-meter shots through a blizzard. Someone like her. "I was a ghost," she said, "and ghosts don't die. They just come back." The 2-kilometer march to LZ Bravo took 90 minutes that felt like 90 hours. The storm fought them every step. Wind drove snow into their faces until breathing became a conscious effort. The cold worked its way through their gear, numbing extremities, sapping strength with every meter gained. Owen Mitchell, strapped to a makeshift litter fashioned from 2 rifles and paracord, drifted in and out of consciousness. Blood loss and shock taking their toll despite Madeline's treatment. Ryan Hayes' shoulder wound had reopened from the strain of helping carry the litter. Dark blood soaked through fresh bandages, freezing in the Arctic air. Danny Torres fell twice his shrapnel wound, weeping steadily, leaving a trail of red drops in the snow that the storm quickly erased. Each time he went down, he got back up. Each time it took longer. Merrick's broken arm throbbed with every heartbeat, waves of pain radiating up to his shoulder and down to his fingertips. But he kept moving, kept the team together through force of will and 35 years of refusing to quit. And Madeline, with 2 cracked ribs and a bullet furrow carved along her side, moved through the pain like it was background noise. She'd been trained to ignore her body's distress signals, to function through injuries that would hospitalize most people, to keep going until the mission was complete or she was dead. But Cole saw the cost, saw the pallor in her face every time she thought no one was looking. The slight hitch in her breathing when she had to lift Owen's litter over an obstacle. The way she favored her left side. She was holding it together through sheer will. Will had limits. Everyone's did. "How much further?" Hayes gasped during a brief halt. His face was gray with pain and exhaustion. Cole checked the GPS. The device was struggling with the storm interference battery dying in the cold. Half a click. 10 more minutes. It felt like an hour. They crested a rise and saw it. The extraction LZ. A flat area barely large enough for a helicopter to land, marked by infrared strobes that pulsed in the white chaos. Through the storm, they could already hear the distant thump of rotors, the Black Hawk fighting its way through weather that should have grounded it. "Overwatch Shadow 7, Cole transmitted. "We have visual on LZ Bravo. Ready for pickup." "Copy that, Shadow 7. Bird is inbound. 2 minutes. Weather is at the edge of flyable. This is your only window." Those 2 minutes stretched like taffy. The team collapsed at the edge of the LZ, conserving what little strength remained. Madeline moved among them one final time, checking wounds, adjusting bandages, offering what comfort she could, with hands that were starting to shake from cold and blood loss and delayed shock. The Black Hawk materialized from the white like a metal angel, rotors beating the snow into a swirling vortex. It touched down, hard skids bouncing on the frozen ground. The crew chief jumped out, helping load the wounded. Mitchell first. Critical. Unconscious. Then Hayes, barely able to walk. Then Torres, supported between 2 crew members. Merrick waved off assistance and climbed aboard himself, cradling his broken arm against his chest. Cole waited for Madeline. She stood at the edge of the LZ, looking back toward the Brooks Range, toward the mountain where she killed a man to save her team, where 147 had become 148. The wind whipped her hair, snow collected on her shoulders. She looked small and alone and infinitely tired. "Cross, we need to go," Cole said. "I thought I was done with this." Her voice was barely audible over the helicopter. "I thought I could be someone else. You saved us. All of us. That has to count for something." "I killed someone." She turned to face him, and Cole saw something break in her eyes. "I took a life again, and the worst part is it felt normal, easy, like I never stopped. Like the 3 years were just pretending." Cole understood then. The weight she carried wasn't just from today. It was from all 148. From every face she'd see tonight when she tried to sleep. From the knowledge that she was good at something terrible. "You had no choice," he said. "There's always a choice." Her voice was hollow. "I could have missed, could have let someone else try. But I didn't, because I'm good at this. Better than anyone. And when you're the best at killing people, you can't escape it. It finds you." "Madeline," he used her first name deliberately. She looked up, surprised. "You're not a killer. You're a soldier who did what soldiers do. Protect the team. That sniper would have killed us all. You stopped him. That's not murder. That's combat. It's still death, and I'm still the one who delivered it." She looked down at her hands. "These hands have killed 148 people. They've saved maybe 30. The math doesn't balance, Cole. It never will." The crew chief was waving frantically. The storm was worsening. They needed to leave now or risk the helicopter being unable to take off. "We have to go," Cole said. "Whatever you're feeling, we'll work through it. But right now, I need you on that bird." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. They ran for the helicopter together. The flight back to Firebase Kodiak was tense and silent. The helicopter's medical officer worked on Owen, stabilizing him for the longer flight to the field hospital. Hayes sat with his eyes closed, conserving energy. Danny had finally allowed himself to show pain face tight as the medic cleaned his shrapnel wounds. Merrick sat with his shattered arm cradled against his chest, watching Madeline. She'd retreated into herself, sitting alone at the far end of the cargo bay, staring at nothing. Her rifle, disassembled and packed away in her medical bag, sat between her feet, hidden again, secret again, like it had never existed, like she'd never existed. Not as Sarah Mitchell, not as Phantom 7, just Madeline Hartley, rookie medic, 6 weeks deployed. Except everyone on this helicopter now knew the truth. When they touched down at Kodiak, a medical team was waiting. They loaded Owen onto a stretcher, immediately rushed him to the waiting medevac bird. Hayes and Danny were escorted to the base hospital. Merrick went with them, still technically in command despite his injury. That left Cole and Madeline standing on the tarmac as the helicopters departed. The storm had finally broken. Weak Arctic sunlight filtered through thinning clouds. "You should get checked out," Cole said. "Those ribs are cracked, maybe broken." "They'll heal." "That's not the point." "I know what the point is." She looked at him. "They're going to want to talk to me. People with clearances higher than yours, higher than Merrick's. And after they talk to me, I won't be a medic anymore." Cole wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she could refuse, could walk away, could be whoever she wanted to be. But they both knew it was a lie. You didn't walk away from 148 confirmed kills. Not when the nation had invested millions in training you. Not when you'd just proven you were still the best at what you did. "I'm sorry," was all he could say. "Don't be." Her voice was flat, empty. "This is what I am. I tried to be something else, but you can't change your nature. You can only hide it until circumstances force you to reveal it." She turned and walked toward the admin building, where officers were waiting, where her future was about to be decided by people who saw her as an asset, not a person. Cole watched her go and felt like he should do something, say something. But there was nothing to say, nothing to do. Some decisions were made at levels far above his pay grade. He just hoped they'd let her keep some piece of herself when they were done. 3 hours later, Cole found himself in a debriefing room that was smaller than the one where this had all started. Just 3 people, himself. Merrick, his arm in a fresh cast, and 2 officers Cole didn't recognize. Their uniforms had no unit insignia, no name tapes, nothing to indicate who they worked for or what authority they represented. Spooks, intelligence community. Probably CIA given Madeline's background. "Walk me through the engagement again," the woman said. She was maybe 50, with iron gray hair, pulled back tight, and eyes that had seen things she'd never talk about. Specifically the shot that killed the enemy sniper. It was the 5th time she'd asked. Cole kept his answers consistent. Captain Hartley assessed the tactical situation, determined that neutralizing the enemy overwatch was critical to our survival, and requested permission to engage. With a rifle that doesn't appear on any equipment manifest. Correct. A custom precision rifle that she'd hidden in her medical pack. Yes, ma'am. And then made a successful 620-meter shot through a blizzard with 40-knot crosswinds, killing the target with a single round. Yes, ma'am. The woman leaned back in her chair, studied Cole like he was a specimen under glass. Sergeant Major Brennan, do you understand how that sounds? A rookie medic with 6 weeks of deployment experience, making a shot that would challenge our top Tier 1 snipers. I understand it sounds impossible, ma'am. Cole met her eyes without flinching. I watched it happen. So did I, Merrick added. Captain Hartley saved 8 American lives today. If she hadn't made that shot, we'd all be frozen corpses on that mountain. The other officer, a man with a face like carved granite, finally spoke. The question isn't whether she made the shot. Recovery teams have confirmed the enemy KYA, Viktor Volkov, former Spetsnaz, wanted by 3 governments. Ballistics match Captain Hartley's weapon. The question is, who is she really? Silence filled the room. Where is Captain Hartley now? Cole asked. Being debriefed separately, the woman said. Her tone suggested that debrief was happening in a room with much higher security clearance than this one, by people whose authority supersedes mine. Which should tell you something, the man added. It told Cole everything. They'd found out what Madeline was, and now they wanted her back. Wanted to turn her back into Phantom 7. Wanted to point her at targets and to pull her trigger. She doesn't want to go back, Cole said carefully, to whatever she was before. She made that clear. What she wants may not be relevant, the man said. His voice carried the flat certainty of someone used to making decisions about other people's lives. Operators with her skill set are strategic assets of the highest value. National security implications supersede personal preference. She's not an asset, Cole interrupted. His voice was hard. She's a person. She walked away from that life for a reason. You should respect that. The woman's expression didn't change. Sergeant Major, you're out of line. With respect, ma'am, I'm not. Cole leaned forward. That woman saved 8 lives today, including mine. She did it at great personal cost, both physical and psychological. If your response is to force her back into a life that was destroying her, then that's enough. The woman stood. This debrief is concluded. You're dismissed, Sergeant Major. We'll be in touch if we have further questions. Cole stood but didn't move toward the door. Is she in trouble? No, this woman's voice softened slightly, almost imperceptibly. She's a hero, but heroes don't get to choose their deployments, not when the nation needs them. That was exactly what Cole was afraid of. He found Madeline 3 hours later in the base chapel. It was empty except for her sitting in the last pew staring at the simple wooden cross on the wall. Her medical pack sat beside her, the rifle still hidden inside waiting. They're going to reactivate you, Cole said, sitting down beside her. I know. Her voice was calm, too calm, the calm of someone who'd accepted the inevitable. You could refuse, Cole said, though they both knew it was hollow. Disappear again. You did it once, so it fees. She shook her head slowly. I'm tired, Cole. Tired of hiding. Tired of pretending. Tired of running from what I am. You're more than a sniper. And am I? She finally looked at him. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry. She was past crying, past feeling much of anything. Because today, when it mattered, that's exactly what I became. And I was good at it. Better than I've ever been at saving lives. Her voice cracked slightly. Maybe that's just who I am. The person who ends things, not the person who heals them. Cole chose his words carefully. You know what I saw up there? I saw someone who hated what she had to do but did it anyway because people were depending on her. That's not a killer, Madeline. That's a preventer. There's a difference. Is there? She pulled out the dog tag pendant she wore, the one from the soldier she'd saved in Kandahar. David Morrison gave me this. Said I gave him a second chance at life. I've thought about that a lot over the last 3 years. 1 life saved versus 147 taken. Now 148. She let the tag drop back against her chest. The math doesn't balance, it never will. But at least when I was a medic, I was trying. Now I'm just going back to what I was. A weapon that kills efficiently and without hesitation. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, full night had fallen. The storm had passed completely, leaving behind a clear Arctic sky filled with stars. What will you do? Cole asked. What I've always done. She stood shouldering her pack. The impossible. Because I'm good at it. Because people like you need people like me to do the terrible things that keep you alive. Because I can't escape what I am. She walked toward the door, then paused. Thank you for trying, Cole, for treating me like a person instead of a weapon. Not many people have done that. You are a person. I was. She looked back at him one last time. But weapons don't get to retire. They just get maintained and redeployed until they break. Then she was gone. 21 days later, Cole stood at the outcropping where Madeline had made her shot. The snow had stopped, but the mountain remained frozen pristine and deadly. Recovery teams had removed Viktor Volkov's body weeks ago. Former Spetsnaz, war criminal. 89 confirmed kills across 3 decades of conflict. The kind of monster that operators like Madeline had been created to eliminate. Cole wondered if knowing that made it easier for her. Probably not. Dead was dead regardless of whether the target deserved it. On the snow-covered rocks where Victor had died, Cole found something, half buried, preserved by the cold. A photograph, laminated, worn at the edges from too much handling. A little girl with blonde hair, maybe 8 years old, gap-toothed smile, holding a stuffed bear. Happy, innocent, unaware that her father would never come home. On the back, written in Cyrillic script that Cole had to photograph and translate later. Katya, I love you, Papa. Cole stared at the photo for a long time. Thought about the man who'd carried it. Monster and father. Killer and parent. The contradictions that humans could contain. The way people could be terrible things and loving things simultaneously. He thought about Madeline, who'd seen this photo through her scope before pulling the trigger. Who'd known exactly what she was taking from this child. Who'd done it anyway because 8 American lives depended on it, 148 souls on her conscience, 148 faces in her dreams, 148 names she'd researched and learned and would carry until the day she died. His radio crackled. Brennan, weather's turning again. Time to go. Yeah, Cole said quietly to the empty mountain. I'm done here. He pocketed the photograph. Someone should know about Katya. Someone should make sure she was taken care of. It wouldn't bring her father back, but it was something. A small piece of humanity in the mathematics of violence. He took one last look at the valley. At the place where 8 men had nearly died. Where one woman had saved them all with a single impossible shot. Where Madeline Hartley had stopped being a medic and become Phantom 7 again. Then he turned and headed back down the mountain. Far away in a facility that didn't appear on any map, a woman who was no longer called Madeline Hartley sat in a briefing room. The walls were covered with photographs, targets, trajectories, tactical maps, the architecture of violence reduced to data points and probability calculations. A man in an unmarked uniform stood before her. Shaw. That's what he'd said his name was, though she knew it was an alias. Everyone used aliases here. Even her. Especially her. High-value target, Shaw said, gesturing to one of the photos. Hindu Kush Mountains, Afghanistan, extreme elevation, unpredictable weather, hostile terrain. Conditions, she asked. Her voice was flat, professional. All the emotion burned away in 3 weeks of psychological reconditioning, of remembering how to be Phantom 7 instead of Madeline Hartley. Impossible for most shooters. For most, she studied the terrain with eyes that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. Read the elevations, the wind patterns, the sight lines, all the variables that would determine whether the target lived or died. Not for me, she said. No. Shaw's expression didn't change. Not for you. You deploy in 48 hours. She nodded, didn't argue, didn't protest. She was done running. This was what she was, a ghost who killed other ghosts, a weapon pointed at problems that couldn't be solved any other way, a woman who tried to be something better and failed. I'll need my rifle, she said, already in the armory, cleaned, calibrated, and ready. And after this mission, Shaw pulled up another image on the screen. Another target, another mountain, another impossible shot that only she could make. There's always another mission, he said. You know how this works. You always did. Yes, she always did. She stood and walked to the window. Outside, it was snowing. It always seemed to be snowing in her life now. Clean white snow covering all the blood, all the death, all the choices that had led her here. Somewhere on a frozen mountain, 8 men were alive because of her. Somewhere else, a little girl named Katya was growing up without a father. The scales didn't balance. They never would. But she'd keep trying, one shot at a time. 149, 150, 200, however many it took until the day someone made a shot she couldn't. Welcome back, Sarah, Shaw said. We've missed you. She didn't correct him about the name. Didn't matter what they called her. She was Phantom 7, had always been Phantom 7. The 3 years as Madeline Hartley had been a beautiful, impossible dream of being someone who saved lives instead of taking them. But dreams ended. Reality remained. And her reality was a rifle, a target, and the cold mathematics of violence that kept the world turning. She picked up the mission folder and headed for the armory. There was work to do. 149. The number that would come next. And the one after that. And the one after that. Until there were no numbers left. Until the weapon finally broke. Until the ghost finally found peace. But not today. Today there was just another mountain, another target, another impossible shot that needed to be made. And Phantom 7 never missed.